Hello and welcome or welcome back to the channel. Today we need to talk about some glassy grid sounds or lead sounds or FM sounds or glitchy grid glassy sounds, however you want to call them. I'm not so familiar with official jargon. I don't even know if that exists, but we all need these sounds. So we need to talk about them. Okay. Yeah, let's grab a grid as always. And the sound or the principle, the core structure of the sound is relatively simple. We also want an arpeggiator so that we can retrigger the sound. These are my default elements that I have in every grid. We don't need those. We only want the LFO. And the only reason I delete them is so that they will not show up on my MIDI controller anymore. But yeah, enough said. Now let's zoom in a little bit. You guys can see something. Okay. Now at the core of the sound generation, we'll use a triangle, not a sine wave. You can then switch back and forth between triangle and sine wave. Gives interesting different timbres. It's actually interesting how different they sound. But yeah, for glossiness, you definitely need triangles. And a lot of randomization, of course. So the first parameter we want to randomize is the fold here. Doesn't sound too interesting, almost like a sync sound, but when we modulate it, already makes a lot more sense. I also want to reduce the sustain. Go for some shorter sounds. Then we need a second sample and hold. By the way, yes, this LFO is just, or sample and hold LFO is configured to create a random value on each note on. So turn this arrow on and put it on hold. And here we want to manipulate the skew. And we want this to be bipolar. Okay, now highlight the entire bunch of them. Drag them over before you let go, hold Option so that it actually creates a copy. We do not want to modulate the fold on this one, just the skew. And, well, the skew maybe only 40%. Because the sound I get from the extreme positions is not really what I want, so just reduce this a little bit. Okay, now we need, of course, to connect this to the phase modulation input and dial in a decent amount. Yeah, and here you can already create a lot of different timbres by setting the modulation intensity to different values, or you can also randomize it if you want. I usually end up using like a value between like 70 and 80%. But of course you can go really far with that as well. Won't need this filter, or wait a second. Maybe let's just set this to high pass. Don't need this one. Yeah, so around 150 hertz. I mean, glassy sounds, they definitely don't need kind of a massive bottom end. And let's turn this resonance down. Move it a bit out of the way. Okay, we're not done yet. We need to fold the waves even more. And what can fold? It is the wave folder. Does something quite similar to this knob. Not quite exactly the same. But yeah, like this, we just manipulate the sound further in the direction we're already taking here. Yeah, I usually prefer to turn off anti-aliasing. And you guessed it, we need to randomize this, not bipolar. maybe up to this position. Okay, let's duplicate that. Another one. Now randomize the decay. Okay, slowly it's getting interesting. Now let's turn on voice stacking and apply the stack spread to the pan knob or to a pan knob. Now let's reduce the amplitude a bit. Not bad. And the sound is still completely dry. Let's turn a low cut on and maybe add some delay. Quite nice. I like it. But let's try something else, or, add some more stuff. Let's go for a chorus. I like the 8V model on this. Yeah, in this case, it almost works as kind of a reverb, or as a kind of it gives us some room impressions. Yeah, and of course, this parameter might maybe want to be randomized. We could do this with a randomizer here, but because we are in the effects tray of the polygrid, we can also use another LFO from here. Whatever you find more convenient. Yeah, but maybe not each note. So turn off that note trigger and maybe a quarter note. And then of course it will only sync up once you hit play. Let's make it a bit more extreme just to hear what it's doing. Cool. Okay, that's it so far for the Glassy grid sound, but they also work very nice in combination with stutter effects. So let's add one, or this video will be terribly short. Let's construct a little stutter device. For that we need a long delay, and we need to route the dry signal into the delay to fill the buffer, and then add the delay back, combine it with the dry signal. Okay, but by default we want the dry signal to go through, and then we also need to route the delay back to itself. Hold shift to create the blend. And now, while the effect is off, we want to feed the dry signal into the buffer so that the delay is always up to date with the latest sound. And when we want the stutter effect, we will open both blend knobs, which will first change this input to the delay. And instead of feeding new sounds into the delay, we will now activate the feedback loop, which then creates a stutter effect. Okay, now usually I just randomize this trigger a bit. So what we need is, we can do this in many different ways, but I like to use a trance device. Now we also need a trigger to tell it, how often it should actually generate a new random number. And for that, I want to use a gate device, then change this gate device to trigger, activate all of them. And by default, it's on 8 node, which is fine. And before I forget it, change this delay to 1 here. So now we have 16 nodes. Get a modulator out, hook it up. And this one does nothing else but switching or modulating these blend knobs to the max position. And we have our stutter device. If you want 30-second notes, then just move this handle to the left. Well, of course, it's now easy to kind of modulate this one as well, back and forth. But maybe I want to create some pitch sweep from 16th notes to 30-second notes and in the opposite direction, just for fun. So let's see. Let's duplicate this thing here. And maybe, whenever we are sliding, I want the note to hold a bit longer, not an 8 note, but maybe a quarter note. So the second sequencer or gates creates quarter notes. And I also figured out that we can modulate the step length. So whenever this is active, I want to slow down this sequencer as well. And we're doing that by reducing the number of steps to 4. And it's a bit difficult to see. 2, 3, 4, I think. So now this should be 4, is it? Well, let me set the probability to 100%, and then we can see what's happening. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that should be fine. Not sure if you can see it on the video, but there are some tiny little dots indicating the modulation amount. So whenever this one is true, which is all the time at the moment, this gate module should switch to a 4-step and quarter notes setting, which seems to be true. Okay, now of course I need something to create a ramp signal, and I want to use curve LFO for that. Reset. Here as well, I want a quarter note. Turn that trigger off, but trigger it by the event, right? Whenever this event occurs. And we will modulate this value here. And it shall be 50%. Okay. No need for softening. Now, is this correct? Yeah, I think so. Well, let's see what happens. Yeah, I mean, the pitch is occurring. This is what I want, but it doesn't yet behave the way I want. It's now occurring all the time. So we, of course, only want this to happen when this step is active. So whenever we have a signal here, it switches to the second output, which we then wire up to this guy here, and then we modulate 50%. Okay. And remove this modulation. So I think that should work now. Yeah, I want to keep this here. And maybe on occasion we want to modulate or pitch it down, or start with a 30-second note delay and modulate it back to 16 notes. So let's see. We should have a reverse module here. So now, well, we can duplicate this, but we need the direct input and the reverse input, and then we need to switch back and forth between them. So let's use the same trigger. And maybe I want the probability to be 50%. And now feed that back into here and this one here, right? Is this correct? Yeah. Give me a sec. No, this input needs to be empty. Okay. Okay, let's listen to it in context. Yeah, I think it can sound really interesting. If you want it to sound a bit sharper, turn off the chorus. Yeah, it gives you a more direct sound. Yeah, and then you can leave it generating random patterns, or you can bounce it if you want a specific sequence. And that's how you get your glitchy, glassy grid FM sound. Okay, hope you liked the tutorial. If so, give me a thumbs up, which is the same as thumbs up. Subscribe, and see you next time.